Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 17th day of July 2023. Hi, apologies for this little bit of a late start. We had to restart the server. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's Monday morning, 19 degrees and mostly cloudy right here in Brisbane. Again, a beautiful day out there today. Well, let's get on with the news for today. And first of all, we'll take a look at the news and brief.
Australia's women have retained the Ashes after defeating England in a one-dayer at Southampton. The tourists posted a total of 7 for 282, with Elise Perry starring with 91 runs. Needing victory to keep their hopes alive, England fell just short despite a century by Nat Sciver-Brunt. Spinner Alana King was one of our stars, claiming 3 wickets. A siege in northern Brisbane has ended peacefully after a standoff with police lasting more than 8 hours. Specialist crews and a team of negotiators were called to a unit in the inner suburb of Nunda just before 3 o'clock yesterday. Police say a 33-year-old man wanted over a string of serious criminal matters surrendered to officers around midnight and is now in custody. A man is set to face court today, charged over the alleged murder and attempted murder of his wife and daughter. The incident happened in Adelaide's northeastern suburbs on Saturday. Neighbours reported hearing gunshots and the 2 women were found in the driveway of a home. The victims have been identified as Alexandra Virgulis, who died at the scene, and her daughter Daniela, who has serious injuries. New South Wales Police are asking for counter-terrorism-like powers to deal with the state's domestic violence offenders. A blitz over the weekend saw almost 600 people arrested and more than 1,000 charges laid.
So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, up to date on Australian Indian Radio. And right now, the next news, which has a lot of interest at this point in time, The Voice. So what's happening in the federal parliament as the politicians finalise that term?
Well, pamphlets containing the information for both the yes and the no campaigns for an Indigenous voice to Parliament, that will soon be unveiled as we get a little bit closer to that referendum date. Now, both sides will be submitting their written arguments to the Electoral Commission today to be included in that official pamphlet that will arrive at the home of every Australian or within their in their mailbox, if you've checked that lately. It'll be a lengthy paper brochure, and the essays have been co-authored, as you said, by MPs from across Parliament. And this comes after the passage of the Constitution Alteration Bill last month, which kind of kickstarts this process. When that was passed, the Electoral Commissioner wrote to members of Parliament. They were given a 28-day period to prepare their written arguments, and they have no more than 2,000 words each. So it'll be a lot of reading for Australians to prepare for that vote. Both campaigns have until tonight to submit their cases, and the Commission will then distribute the document to voters no later than 2 weeks before the vote on that proposed voice. Now, both designs will then be translated into multiple languages, and millions of copies will be made of that physical pamphlet. We know that this is something the Albanese government wanted to abolish. They did cite that methods of communications have changed dramatically since we had that last referendum. We know that some yes campaigners were a little bit worried that this pamphlet could be a form of spreading misinformation on The Voice. So there are some concerns still there. We know that this was something that the coalition demanded, though, during negotiations with the government. So that's going ahead. In terms of knowing when this vote will actually happen, we're expecting an announcement from the Prime Minister in the coming months. We do know it should be sometime between October and December when that vote will happen. In the meantime, those MPs are preparing those arguments, and that'll be submitted tonight for Australians to read ahead of that vote.
Today, we're up to date on Australian Indian Day. Right now, looking at that seat of Phaidon, and LNP claims victory.
After losses in the Aston by-election and New South Wales and Victoria state elections, finally something to celebrate for the Liberal Party.
We are on the right path as a party. We have a great leader and we will return to government.
The Labor economic experiment is failing Australians. Labor's energy experiment is failing Australians.
In the end, an easy victory for the LNP for the safe Gold Coast seat it's held for almost 4 decades. Outgoing former Minister Stuart Robert and the damning Robodebt Royal Commission seemingly having little impact on the result. Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles is unfazed by the win and says his government is focused on the big issues like cost of living pressures.
I actually think this is a pretty lethargic result for the opposition.
And Labor questions why the coalition spent up big on such a safe LNP seat.
More than $500,000 on the seat, which we think was probably at least 10 times what Labor spent on the seat.
Ultimately, this was an easy win for the LNP, with results falling roughly as expected. If it says anything, it's just that of the status quo here in Queensland, highlighting once again the problem Labor has at a federal level in this state, with just 5 of Queensland's 30 seats.
We do need to perform much better here at the federal level.
Those sentiments echoed by some Gold Coast voters.
The Labor Party had, of course, no chance of winning that election because it was already a safe Liberal seat.
It's the right move for this election and moving forward.
Only time will tell if the LNP has got what it takes to wrestle control from Labor at next year's Queensland state election. Michelle Tapper, ABC News.
So next year's election is something to look forward to, and we'll keep an eye on the situation as it transpires. And as we know, that was a safe LNP seat, but even then, there was so much funds that were spent on the campaign. I guess that they were not going to take any chances, were they? Well, right now, let's go to Victoria, where the government is announcing some sweeping new reforms.
You've heard me say many times that gambling is for the majority of Victorians a perfectly legitimate recreational activity. But for some, and I think it's a growing number, it is the cause of profound harm. That's why over our time in office, both this Labor government and previous Labor governments, we've always looked to make reform and change to try and keep people safe. The advent of really important technology means that there's more steps, there's further steps that we can take now. And there's also some things that I think are really important for us to do, technology or no technology. So today we are announcing a really significant package of reform. It will mean that Victoria is at the forefront of trying to deal with gambling related harm. We will have on any measure the best and strongest system, particularly as it relates to electronic gaming machines anywhere in our country, and some would argue anywhere in the world. There's a number of features to this. In general terms, we are going to change the hours that venues are open so that they will be closed for at least 6 hours per day. We will also change spin rates so that machines spin and the pace of gambling is slowed down. We will also bring in a profound change to the amount of money you can put into the electronic gaming machine, into the poker machine. Load up limits, they're called, from $1,000 down to $100. And most importantly, we will deliver mandatory pre-commitment and carded play.
There are new laws to take effect, and I think overall, in general, I'd agree with those laws because we need to tackle that gambling problem. Right now, the other problem that we have is domestic violence, and there has been an outbreak into the number of reported cases, and New South Wales Police are seeking more power to combat that.
Almost 600 people were arrested from Wednesday through to Saturday here in New South Wales as police used Operation Amarok to crack down on domestic violence offenders across the state. Around 4,000 apprehended domestic violence order compliance checks were carried out, which saw more than 1,000 charges laid, not just in relation to domestic violence, but also other things like the possession of firearms and prohibited weapons. Now, unfortunately, partner and family violence is an epidemic here in Australia. Over the past week alone, 8 women died due to domestic violence. Over the weekend in South Australia, we saw an Adelaide woman who was allegedly shot dead by her husband, while her daughter has been seriously injured. Now, back here in New South Wales, police are using that 4-day crackdown on domestic violence to lobby for reform. They're asking the state government to give them more powers to treat the most serious domestic violence offenders more like they would treat terrorists or organised criminals. Now, this could see transition away from apprehended domestic violence orders towards serious crime prevention orders, which carry more severe penalties if they're breached. Now, for now, the state government is saying they'll sit down with police and discuss the potential for change.
So there you are, and I think that would be the step in the right direction as long as it's not overstepping the mark. As we know through White Ribbon as well, we raise awareness of such uses. Well, right now, there's a breakthrough in the potential cancer prevention.
A team of researchers in Melbourne say they have reshaped 30 years of scientific history with a breakthrough which could pave the way for preventative cancer treatments.
The treatment harnesses the body's ability to fight off disease. Associate Professor Dan Pellicci is the group leader of cellular immunology at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute. He joins us now in the studio. G'day, welcome to News Breakfast.
Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, it sounds like some pretty impressive research. Can you describe to us what you've been able to find or what it's about?
My lab has discovered how an immune cell in the body is made in an organ called the thymus. So most people are very familiar with the major organs in the thymus, the heart, the lungs, the liver, the spleen, but the thymus is this unsung hero that is responsible for making all T cells in the body. So with no T cells, we wouldn't survive very long. So
Right, and in particular T cell, it's the gamma delta T cell.
Yeah, that's right.
So tell us about that and the potential for that in terms of the use of that preventing infection or disease in the body.
Yeah, so gamma delta T cells, their main role is actually to combat infections and combat different types of cancer. So they're made in the thymus, and what we showed is that previously it was thought that these cells were made in fetal tissues, but now we know actually they're made in the thymus, and they're made in the thymus after we're born.
Wow. So you've been able to track it through now because you've looked at, you took the cells or the material from people under 16, was that the
that's
case?
Right.
And so we can work out actually what this really significant part of our body is doing for us as we age.
Yeah, that's right. So we were able to get some thymus tissues from children that visited the Royal Children's Hospital, and they need heart surgery to repair small holes in the heart, and the thymus actually sits on top of the heart, so we're able to collect this tissue that otherwise would be thrown in the bin and then discover how these cells are made in the body. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah, so cast forward a bit and hoping the research continues on track, which it clearly has been so far. What's the potential for improving the body's ability for fighting infection and disease through these cells and through the thymus?
Yeah, so because we know that these cells play a critical role in infection and cancer prevention, and from our study that we've carried out at the Murdoch Children's Research Institute, we can see how how these cells get turned on and turned off, and therefore if we can generate these cells and enough of these cells, we can bolster the immune system and use that for cancer research or vaccine research to prevent disease.
I'm curious, is there a moment where you all go, we've done it, or is it just a very slow reach to that point?
Well, I will say that the research has taken several years to perform, but I think very early on we knew we were onto something big here, and that was just a hallelujah moment, if you like, and it was just a great feeling that you've made a discovery that changes 3 decades of history. So,
Well, Dan, congratulations to you and the team, and I say this often and I'll say it again, I reckon Australia has the best medical researchers and scientists in the world, so we wish you and your team all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So there you are. That's a very, very good breakthrough, even though the research has taken a while. And as they do, because some things are time-consuming, and research is one of those. So, ladies and gentlemen, my last story for today, the lead-out story, as I should say, is coming to some of the iconic things that have been so Australian, and many of these are now getting lost forever. Why? We have new migrants coming in, and demographics have changed. The landscape is changing demographic together with that, and the customs and traditions, the thinking, the way, or the even I would dare to say even the Australian way, the so-called Australian way, is changing as well. We've got the new migrants who have come in now, and many of these things would be, foreign to them, what Australia used to be. But it's good to see that iconic Darwin event attracts thousands to Mendel Beach.
One man's trash and another man's treasure. Cans and bottles glued and sealed into makeshift boats. These crews are about to take on one of Darwin's wildest races.
A lot of Great Northern cans, about a lot of heavy nights of drinking, a lot of sore heads the next day.
We're made out of some drums down there. We got cans all the way around, and some plywood, some cardboard. And it's about over 700 cans.
A gathering of all sorts and all sports at Darwin's famous Mendel Beach, with a showdown between long-running rivals, the Vikings and the American Marines.
Ready for battle. We've got one objective this year, to kill our arch nemesis, the team of the American Marines.
The event, more than just fun and games.
It's an iconic event now, and it started in '74 as a way of cleaning up the streets of all the cans.
A change in design in the 80s from steel to lighter, more crushable aluminium cans had big consequences for the race. Boat motors were banned, leaving competitors with only their wit and strength.
On your boats, ready, go!
About a dozen boats have been checked rigorously before they can compete and race and test their flotation capacity.
Went better than expected. It's still floating.
I've never seen anything like that in my life before.
An unexpected loss for this troop of Americans, witnessed by thousands.
We should have drank a few more beers, get more fuel in it,
Pulling out all the stops for the main and final event of the day, teams put their creations to the test again to fight for hidden treasure in the Battle of Mendel. Roxanne Fitzgerald, ABC News.
So wonderful to see that iconic event is still going ahead, and the true Australian spirit. There's so many things like that which are now gone forever. Those were the days, as they reckon. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you today in this late segment, but it's been wonderful to have your company to start off this week. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.